So, guys, today we're gonna have a fireside chat with Sanjay, guys, Mr. Sanjay Vyas, like I told you about. So, before starting the session, a huge shout out to BrowserStack, who are our premium sponsor for all our community events, whether it's an online or offline event. Now, talking about our speaker today, Mr. Sanjay Vyas. Sanjay Vyas, an accomplished educator with an impressive track record, Sanjay has guided over 4 lakh students, conducted corporate training sessions for renowned companies such as Microsoft, Siemens, and Oracle. With him as a mentor, you can embark on this learning experience with confidence. Uh, Sanjay sir, I am really happy to have you here with us. I am sure you guys will be able to see him. Perfect. With the high energy. Hi, sir. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Thank you,
All good,
Arun,
sir.
for inviting me.
How are you, sir? How is um I hope you're doing well.
Thank you for asking. Yes,
Perfect.
times are good.
Now, in upcoming I mean 30 to 45 minutes, I'll be asking you a lot of questions. And by the time, guys, make sure you guys are having a paper and a pen. Okay. So whatever questions I'm asking, if that is relevant to you, I'm pretty sure it is. Just make sure you guys are making notes. Is that okay, guys? That works for you? Perfect. Perfect, guys. So my first question to you, sir, is one of the things my team has always heard from you is you don't remember names, but you remember faces. How is that relevant with respect to visualizing code?
Ah, interesting question. Let's take a scenario. You take a newborn baby and leave him in the jungle and go and collect him after 16 years. If you start speaking to him in any language, Hindi, English, Bangla, Gujarati, C++, Java, he's not going to understand that. If you give something to him in writing, he's not going to be able to read it. But if you take out a sword and start running towards him and yelling, "Ah," of course he would understand.
Yeah,
Human brain is not built for text from birth. Text we have to learn, we have to understand, we have to analyze. So if you are trying to learn something or trying to teach someone, visuals make it much better to analyze, understand, retain for longer. I would recommend that everyone, while learning, they start drawing what they're reading. It doesn't matter what you draw, doodle it, create geometric shapes, create landscapes. It doesn't matter. If you map what you're reading to a visual, your brain will understand it much better.
yeah, perfect. Perfect, sir. My next question to you is, can you walk us through your 40 years of career? What kind of tech landscape have you seen? And going forward, what kind of things should young programmers focus on?
Well, 40 years ago, I started with COBOL on mainframes, punch cards. So used to write code by hand on a coding sheet, then transfer it to the mainframe, run the cards. Since then, programming hasn't changed, languages have. So the basic concept of programming is solving a customer's problem. It doesn't matter what language, what framework, what operating system you use. But yes, COBOL is where I started. Got bored of writing the same kind of programs day in and day out, so I got onto Unix and C in mid 80s. I started teaching Unix and C in postgraduate classes. moved on to C++. Then Windows came in 90, started Windows programming, creating those tiny little GUI applications with menus and toolbars by hand, that is writing C code. And then that went on to Java and then Python and JavaScript and now more recently frameworks and newer language. But as I said, to me, programming hasn't changed. It's still using the tools you have to solve your customer's problem. And most of the time, customer doesn't care whether you use tool A or tool B. Of course, if the cost is involved, maybe yes, but otherwise the customers don't really care what you're using as long as you're solving their problem in the shortest possible time. So over my 40 years, I probably have picked up 15 plus languages, which I can write, should I say, a little uh, bashfully. I can write them fluently without looking up Google.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's one thing that we learned in our early days. We never had internet or Google, or so we learned to read books, understand first, and then write code. So I still don't copy paste. I still write code there. So that's what this journey has been.
Okay, perfect. My next question is, you have worked with big companies and started your own business as well. How would you compare to, do you have a preference?
Uh, Big companies give you the opportunity and the system to learn a lot of things. You learn communication, you learn discipline, you learn working in teams, you learn big landscape, major customers. But starting my own company gave me the freedom to be wrong, to do what I felt I should do, and then figure out whether this was the right way or not, and should I course correct. Many of my decisions went right, some of them went wrong. So whether you are growing within the organization, that's a big organization that you're working with and learning a lot of tricks of trade versus whether you're going growing personally. That's the difference between working for someone else and starting your own company.
Perfect. And what would you prefer uh, right now? Like, what would you suggest to a young person? Should he start his own venture or should he go and work somewhere else?
Why would you learn at your own expense? Learn at someone else's expense. No? I would always suggest that the first 2 3 years of your career, you should go and join, if not a mega corp, actually not mega corp, but an SME, where you will learn a lot of things for free. Not just free, they'll pay you for it.
Okay.
So once you learn not just your craft, which may be testing or programming, but you learn a whole lot of other things free of cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you know the tricks of the trade and your craft, and then if you think there is an interesting idea,
Yeah.
that's the time you start on your own.
That is amazing. That advice is amazing. Perfect. My next question is, how do you keep your love for programming alive after so long? What drives you to continue learning at your age?
Yeah, I've asked myself also this question. I mean, I code at least 4 to 5 hours a day even today. I'm picking up
Oh,
some new stuff. I'm tinkering with something, figuring out how the thing works. I think the answer may lie in the fact that I visualize everything. So my brain never gives up on me. My brain never feels tired. Why is this guy reading so much? In fact, my brain is pretty excited because when I draw stuff and say, oh, so this is what is happening inside this framework. Interesting. So my brain is equally excited to see those visuals. See,
Hmm.
Visuals are chocolates for your brain.
Okay.
You
Okay.
feed the brain visuals, he's happy puppy, he'll not give up. But if you start reading too much,
Yeah.
then the brain gets. So I think the reason why I'm still programming is I'm still visualizing.
Oh, lovely. Uh, so my next question is, what have a lot of people, sorry, we have a lot of people in the community who are just starting out their career. What are the top three advices which you would give to someone who is just starting his career?
Uh, I think the first advice is fundamental. I see too many people these days who start off directly with a framework, just go get the code or tool from somewhere, Stack Overflow, Chat GPT.
Yeah.
It's detrimental in the long run. I think the number one advice is fundamentals should be absolutely in place.
Yeah.
In fact, if you think about it, people with good fundamentals are the ones who will be using ChatGPT. Those who
Yeah.
are only using ChatGPT would be out of the way because they don't know anything beyond what everyone else can do.
Yeah.
So the first advice is fundamental. Second
Yeah.
advice is communication, and that's what I find a lot of people who are great at what they do,
Yeah.
but they are unable to communicate, unable to express, unable to absorb the other person's perspective, and things don't turn out very well for them.
Hmm.
So you may be great at what you're doing, but if you don't know how to communicate, interact, you're
Yeah.
not going to go very
Yeah.
far. And the third, disapita dialogue hai, but there is no substitute for hard work.
Yeah.
No matter whatever one says, unless you're ready to put your head down and do your stuff,
Yeah.
it's not going to go far. It's like a musician saying, well, I won't play this piece of music because I played it already. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to do it repeatedly. You have to. So when I see people who are just getting the code from somewhere or copy pasting, I feel a bit sad for them. Saying in the same time you could have actually understood and increased your skills, your worth, but you are just relying on transferring it there. So there is no
Hmm.
substitute for hard work.
Hmm.
So these are the three things that I would say.
Perfect. Guys, all the people who are in the chat right now, can you guys relate to what Sanjay sir is saying? Can I see zero and one? Why is everyone not saying anything? He's okay. Everyone is saying yes. Perfect. By the time after the session, I'll be picking. Oh, we have got three questions right now, three or four questions right now. I'll be picking up all your questions after all my questions are done. But make sure the question Q&A part is filled up, or ask all your questions in the Q&A section. Okay, perfect. Sir, my next question is, how is it working for a large scale government projects like architecting, building NHAI toll plaza software?
It was a very interesting experience and very interesting project. It started about 6 to 7 years ago.
Hmm.
It was done in Java, on running on Linux, with backend on MySQL. Dealing with government agencies is an art because they have a very fixed way of thinking and a very fixed way of doing things.
Yeah.
So luckily, I left that part to my colleague to handle while I could focus on building the system. And it was a great experience because we built a system which was quite ahead of its time because that system is forever running. It can't be shut down even for a second.
Hmm.
So we learned how to architect it to have always on system upgrade while it's running,
Yeah.
do the upgrades remotely. A lot of new things keep getting added on. Like FastTag wasn't there initially, it got added on. And believe me, we were able to integrate FastTag without shutting down the system.
Oh.
But I think the government agencies also have to be given credit because Mr. Nitin Gadkari was very supportive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he commended us for implementing FastTag before the deadline. He
Mm-hmm.
congratulated the entire team. And now it's running on about 120 plus toll plazas on the national highway. But I not only acted as an architect, but I wrote lots of code.
Mm-hmm.
The core engine, the IoT interfaces. So that was fun. That was really a good experience.
Okay. Nice. In the previous question, you mentioned about the third point was basically having a really good communication. Can you
Second
talk?
thing.
Yeah, second point. So, can you please double click on that? Like, how can a person improve their communication skills?
Oh, that's a vast topic and probably requires an expert on communication. But a few pointers that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Communication is 80% listening and 20% speaking. People tend to do the opposite.
Yeah.
See, you're in a room full of brilliant people. You are just one of them.
Yeah.
Let them speak. Get their
Yeah.
thoughts. They are, eight of them. You listen to them. So communication means listening. Second, which is very important and sometimes missing, the focus in listening. People hear, they don't listen. So while two people are communicating, I'll just give you a very small example. Just now you said the third point was communication. I was
Yeah.
listening very carefully.
Yeah.
I was not just hearing you say something and responding. I
Yeah.
heard you say it was the third point, and I said, no, no, that was that
Mm.
focus in listening must be there.
Yeah.
The lack of focus, even though you may be in listening mode, you miss out a lot of things.
Yeah.
You don't pick up on the details. You don't pick up on the intent or the perspective that people are giving. That is the listening part of it. The speaking part of it, people have a lot of tics. So, I mean, while I was saying, it's like I know, and it clouds your communication. So, one is you have to simplify your language. You have to remove all the tics that you might have, like I know, I mean, you know, uh, hmm. It is not only distracting,
Yeah.
it clouds your speech. So
Yeah.
listen with intent and focus. Speak without all these tics. Speak very straight. Don't use fancy words and fancy phrases. They might sound great, but doesn't add to the communication.
Right. Okay. My next question is: in your entire career, if you had to choose the top three turning points where you had a chance to make a decision which changed the which sorry decision drastically changed the trajectory of your career.
All right.
Yeah.
This might be a little boring, but it will kind of set the path.
Yeah.
I was a very bad student. I never got more than 40% in my school or even college. I was a musician. I used to play the violin, and I wanted to become a musician. So from violin, I picked up the flute, and to keep my family happy, I did my graduation in science. I don't even remember what all we did, and then came to Mumbai to learn from Pandit Hariprasad Chaurasia. And when I went to his place, they said he's gone to a Europe tour. He'll be back in 3 months. I didn't know what to do for 3 months. So I read a ad which says learn programming in 2 months. I said, great. He'll be back in three. I'll be back in two. And I went there.
Yeah,
Uh, so the professor said, oh, there'll be an exam at the end. So I laughed. Take the exam. Who cares? I'm not here to learn.
yeah,
I'm here to pass time
yeah.
to keep myself occupied through the day.
Mhm.
But something strange happened. I was sitting in those classes without any pressure, without any fear, without worrying about exams, without worrying about will I pass. So I sat with such open mind.
Yeah,
For the first time in my life, I understood everything. I actually topped it. I was surprised. My parents were shocked. They said, "Oh, you are number one." I said, yeah. You are the top of the. They couldn't believe that I was anywhere near the top. So see, I think what changed my career trajectory there from going towards a musician, and I think that's a very great point, that fear and pressure stops you from learning and doing things that you can actually do well. So that was the first point. Second, I worked for about 7 years in a large firm writing COBOL and Unix and C, and then I shifted to training. And I realized that companies always want to make money more than do good training. So after trying to work the system for 2 years, I realized that they're not going to learn. They just want to make money, and they're not taking any advice and opinion on how to make it better. And this sounds like a brag, but I had 2,000 rupees in my pocket in 1993, and I decided to start my own company, which is focused on training, not so much on money making. So the company was called Synergetics. I started it in 1993, and I did what I wanted, training the way I wanted, hired people. That changed my trajectory further. I sold off that company in 2006 to Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, who's one of the big
no,
investors. Sadly, he is no more.
yeah,
And the third turning point was I could no longer take सर आज पेट दुख रहा है आज मैं नहीं आऊंगा मेरी लीव्स में ये मार्क I mean I found myself doing too many administrative things than technical things. I mean it's
mhm,
great for someone who wants to do it, but my heart was not into पेट दुख रहा है, give me leave, you didn't give me a raise last month. So I quit and I said I'll just do technology. So for the last 10 years I've been working as independent, and I've just been doing technologies. I get great projects, love architecting them, training the teams, overseeing the projects, delivering it to the customer. So the first point from musician to programmer, second point from employee to founder, and third, just focusing on what I love. No extra administrative stuff.
okay. So after listening to you, all the three stories, okay, when was the time when you started teaching people? Was it the time when you hired them and started training them, or prior
No.
that also?
While I was working with a company called Datamatics,
Mm-hmm.
they asked me whether I would be interested in teaching postgraduate students programming. So this was about 84, 85, 86.
Okay.
I started teaching COBOL programming, basic programming, um, and then later got on to Unix and C.
Mm-hmm.
And the visualization happened, and then I started loving it. I could visualize how things worked, and I would draw those visuals in the classroom. And surprisingly, people understood more easily. So I started enjoying the whole process of visualizing technologies and showing it to people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how the teaching started. So
Right.
the company that I started,
Mm-hmm.
we used to do software development as well as training.
Okay. Do you remember any of the first instance where you were teaching people and they were also amazed by the way you were teaching?
The first instance was the first training that I went to. They threw me out in half an hour,
Oh,
and they said no hard feelings, but you can't teach. So
okay.
the manager I had was very supportive. He counseled me. He gave me a few tips. I just start again slowly, and then I went back to the next class, and then it took off from there. But I think this one particular incident that happened, which changed the whole process, was the university included Pascal in the contents from the next year, and none of us knew Pascal because we just knew COBOL and Basic and a bit of Fortran.
Hmm.
So they gave us a manual and they said prepare on it and to teach from next year. Now I struggled with Pascal. I couldn't understand a whole lot of things like pointers and procedures because we came from an earlier era. But somehow I struggled, managed to do it. And when I came to data structures, I just gave up. I couldn't understand head or tail or current previous next equal to current next.
Hmm.
Current next previous equal to current previous. This will disconnect the node. It
Yeah.
disconnected my brain because I just couldn't understand. So out of frustration, I started drawing it. And
Okay.
then I realized, oh, this makes sense. I can understand it. And then I started drawing in the classes as well. And students also said, oh, I can understand it. This is easy.
Yeah.
So that's where it started. And my whole learning and teaching process became concept
Okay.
visualization.
Perfect. So that means someone who is learning from you is not just learning programming, but they're learning a technique that how to learn.
Yes, and in fact, I used to do this workshop for my employees. It was a 5 day workshop on how to learn and how to teach, which involved majorly how to visualize. People don't know how to
Mm.
visualize anything.
Yeah.
So we have a step by step process in converting text to visuals and then using it to understand and teach. So
Mm.
that's a part science, part art. So yes, if you attend any of the workshops or the video, you will instantly see that there's always a visual that is being
Yeah.
discussed about. There's always
Perfect.
analyzing that visual to understand what it does rather than just pure text and syntax.
Hmm. Perfect. Anurag just wrote something. The native language for the brain is not .txt, it is
But not
.mp4.
MVP or MP4.
Yeah.
Yes, that's one statement I use in my
Yeah.
workshops and class that
Yeah.
the native format for brain is not .txt but .mov or MP4
Yeah.
because anything that you can see, your brain can analyze.
Yeah.
It has no choice. It has to analyze. It has to
Yeah.
understand.
Perfect. So my team have dropped a link for Sanjay sir's course. Okay, make sure you guys are going and checking it out. Uh, like I said, you will not just learn about how you can program, but this will be a new technique how you can learn new things. I'm pretty sure this technique you can leverage in the upcoming future also. Perfect. Now I'll be picking up my questions are done. I'll be picking up the questions from the audience side. So my first question, Lai Parik is asking, what is the difference between async, await, and promise, and when should we use async, await, and when to use promise?
Uh, Async Await was actually invented by Microsoft way back in 2010 for C Sharp. Uh, it's a very interesting thing. When you do an await, your program code simply abandons that point of execution and runs back to the event loop. So, in fact, await means do not wait.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the event loop and start processing. So, when does it come back? Well, whatever you said await on, once that is completed,
Mm-hmm.
it comes back to the execution point. In fact, the video on test drive
Yeah.
handles this situation in a visual form where you can see how it works. So now, how is it different from promise? Well, promise is a JavaScript object which defers execution. So you say, do this, and then later, if it is successful, then do that, and if it's a failure, then do the error part. So promise is the object of JavaScript which does deferred execution. Await basically calls the promise and waits for the success. So async await is more like a wrapper around promise, saying I will wait for this promise to complete. Meanwhile, I'll go and process some more events in the event queue. So neither async await nor promises make it multi-threaded. Neither of them can run anything in parallel by their own. And async await is basically a promise written in a simplified manner.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I hope, Lai, that answers your question. Next question is asked by Anurag. Do you think ChatGPT and generative AI is going to give a rise in Tumblr, less critical programmers?
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. ChatGPT is a great thing, but ChatGPT should not be the only thing that we rely on. Uh, I have used ChatGPT and I know it gives wrong answers, wrong code, inefficient implementation. Many a time when I look at the ChatGPT generated code, I say, "Oh my God, I'll have to fix it now. This doesn't look right. This does not work efficiently."
Hmm.
But it does give you ideas. It does give you direction. What would happen is if people, let's say, stop going to Stack Overflow to ask questions, there people will stop going to Stack Overflow to answer them. Over a period of time, ChatGPT will have no source
Yeah.
for its answers. So, in a way, yes, you are dissuading people from generating the knowledge that you want to consume.
Hmm.
So, it's always said that a good programmer will ChatGPT would not lose his job.
Yeah.
A bad programmer who only relies on ChatGPT, well, all the best.
Mhm. Yeah. My next question is there is there anything I need to learn before starting JS?
Surprisingly not. JS is one of the simplest language to begin with and hardest to master.
Oh,
So programming fundamentals is something that you need to learn before any programming language, not just JavaScript, but just about any programming language. And I'm surprised how many people don't know the fundamentals. And I'm not
yeah,
talking about fundamentals as a good going into microchip and understanding registers and ALU. No, no, not that level. The software fundamentals. How a
yeah,
program works, what is a process map, what is heap and stack, how do things get organized, what happens when program runs in memory. I would say a large number of programmers are completely unaware of it.
mhm,
And in that video, the test drive, I've included that as part of the JavaScript course. So we first understand what is a process map, and
yeah.
then we get into JavaScript and saying how does it use it.
Okay, perfect. I hope Mahesh that answers your question. Next question is from Mohit, and he's asking, what are some best practice for writing clean, maintainable, and effective JavaScript code?
It's a efficient JavaScript code. Uh, get rid of switch case if else if. Trust me, switch case is the most evil thing in programming. Without you realizing, it makes you go back to your code and keep modifying it over and over again, producing new bugs, crashing productions, and generally your weekends are troubled because of that. Switch case, if else ladder, and new are three things you should eliminate. New of your own classes, not new of the library, but new of your own classes. And you will realize that your code is much cleaner. It's more maintained. Actually, doesn't require maintenance, and it'll turn out to be more efficient. Let me give you an example. A million lines of code in National Highway Authorities of India toll plaza, not a single switch case or offensive. There is not a single switch case or if else if or a new anywhere in my code. Result, I can upgrade that application while it's running. Forget about crashing. That doesn't happen. Our existing code doesn't crash because we never change our existing code. Why? Because there is no switch case, there is no if else if, there is no new, there is no hard coding. It takes some discipline to architect and code like this, but it's possible to write bug free and maintenance free code.
That is amazing. Um, Now, Sakshi is asking, what are some of, what are some performance optimization techniques for improving the speed and effective efficiency of JavaScript code?
All right. First of all, very simple things like functions. You may not realize it, but whenever you define a function, it creates a function object and a prototype object and has a proto parent. If you have 1,000 function, you have just doubled the number of objects and execution time for your code. Stop writing functions. There's only one type of code that will still have to be a function, which is a generator. Rest, all functions should be converted into lambdas, and
Mhm.
constructor function should be converted into classes. Because class methods are as efficient as lambdas, they don't have prototype, they are more efficient. Second, stop using lambdas inside classes. React people do that a lot. You're making your components fat because every component will then contain images or rather copies of that same function. So stop writing functions except generator, write lambdas or classes and don't write lambdas inside classes. That's a good starting point. Second, the C language for is the most performant. So be wary of using for off. It's the slowest. Uh, Efficiency wise, just these three things will make your code perform at least 20 to 30% faster. And I'm benchmarked.
Perfect. Perfect. I hope, Sakshi, that answers your question. Next, Hemant is asking, what are skills software developer should have considering a vast ecosystem of tools and frameworks?
Well, in our days, developers were developers. We only did COBOL programming. We did nothing else. There was no testing, there was no deployment, there was no CI, CD pipelines. I admire today's developers because the number of things that they have to do to retain their job, which includes knowing the programming language, the framework, CI/CD tools, Git, Jira, and all sorts of tools. But don't lose focus of your core craft. You are a developer. You should focus on development. But what tends to happen is we get slotted into a very small corner. So about 6, 8 years ago, when I was teaching at CDAC, everyone wanted to learn Java. Nobody wanted to learn JavaScript. Today at CDAC, everyone wants to learn JavaScript. Nobody wants to learn Java. And I pity both the groups. Everyone should learn programming,
Mhm.
absolute fundamentals, stuff like object-oriented principles, functional programming, Then come to others, like if you're doing backend programming, you have to understand good networking fundamentals, database technologies. Don't get too much into the other DevOps tool
Mm-hmm.
if you want to retain your core skills. DevOps is fine, good as an add-on, but learning Maven doesn't make me a better Java developer.
Mm-hmm.
So focus on your your core first, and then rest of the tools. They will come by. I mean, once you get into any project, you will learn Git and Jira and how to do push and testing. And but have you forgotten your fundamentals? You focus on that.
Got it. Got it. Now, Ranjan is asking, do promise and synchronizers or synchronizers? Can you please explain asynchronizers in JavaScript?
All right. Promise is synchronous. So when you create a promise
Okay.
object and you call the executor function, promise will wait till the executor function returns. It will not move an inch. And if you don't believe me, create a new promise, call a function, and put an endless while loop. See that promise never returns. So what is asynchronous? Oh, then and catch are asynchronous, not the promise itself. So once the promise object has been created synchronously, and you say then, that is asynchronous. So now what is asynchronous? No. It does not mean runs in background, does not mean runs parallel. JavaScript is single threaded, nothing runs in parallel. In other words, within a process, two JavaScript function can never execute at the same time. End of story. So what do we mean by asynchronous? Here, asynchronous means executed elsewhere at some other time. Not now, not here. So when you say then or catch, nothing happens. Your code continues. Then and catch are waiting, deferred. Once your function executes and returns, then they jump into action and then will execute and catch will execute. Something called parallelism, which means your process can run multiple things on multiple processors at the same time. JavaScript is not capable of that. Something called concurrent, which means your process can do things by taking turns on single CPU. JavaScript is not even concurrent. Asynchronous means I will fire you, you wait. Once I finish my work, then you start. That is asynchronous. So nothing is happening in parallel.
Next question is it it's still relevant to learn how to code, knowing that AI are capable to write clean and stable code?
Ah, no, they don't write clean and stable code. I have used Chat GPT enough to know that they are nowhere near the level of an experienced programmer. How can it be? It's just going to some GitHub repo, copying some code and giving. He doesn't know what he's giving you. He thinks this is what you want. And because
Yeah,
you don't know what you want, you are just going to take it
yeah,
and run with it. Good luck.
yeah.
So, yeah, there will be a time, maybe 50 years from now, where there will be no programmers because by that time AI would have become good enough to write programs on its own. But in the near future, no, I don't trust AI to write clean, stable, or efficient code yet.
Folks,
And
I'll
trust me, I've
I'll
written a lot of it. I've generated a lot of code to realize it's
yeah.
not worth.
Folks, I'll just pick two more questions. Okay. Um, so Tejas is asking, what is closure? How is it different from lexical scope?
Okay, I've got bashed for this opinion. People actually abusing me on social media when I said closure is an object. So they've said, "बुड्ढे कुछ आता जाता नहीं है तो चुप बैठ." Closure is a function. No, no. See, what happens is when a function uses a variable from outside its scope, that is called a lexical scope. So whatever is written outside your function is your lexical scope. If you use a variable or refer to a variable from outside, JavaScript panics and says, hey, where do I now keep it? So JavaScript creates an object called closure and puts a reference to that variable, extra reference, duplicate, so that even if the outer function is gone, you still have a reference. So lexical scope is the area outside. So if you're living in a house, a flat, the area in your society is your lexical scope. For society, the main road is the lexical scope. So that's what a lexical scope is. And closure is an object which quietly captures references to variables in the lexical scope so that you can continue using it. Closure is an object.
Perfect.
And all these visuals have been captured, discussed in that test drive video on JavaScript. It has
Oh,
async await, promises, closures, lexical scope. All these things are discussed visually. What I'm trying to visualize with my hand, the actual
yeah,
visual which is explained.
perfect. I'll ask my team to drop the link in the chat just after this question. Uh, my next question is, can you please explain BOM, browser object model?
BOM is the daddy of DOM. So the entire browser has an API called Browser Object Model, which has five things. So you have location, you have history, you have navigator, you have screen. These are four objects. And the fifth object is document. Most developers only know document downwards, and that is called DOM. So DOM is the API which allows you to manipulate the contents within the page, and it's just one of the objects in BOM which allows you to control the world, the whole browser, not just the content of the browser.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that was it. I have one question. So, sir, you have an experience of 40 plus years. Like, any particular advice for a tester, like how they should see programming? Because I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of manual testers who want to jump into automate, and how should they see programming at the first place?
Uh, to catch a thief, you have to think like a thief.
Yeah.
Now, what I see is testers say, "Oh, that's programming job. I don't need to know it."
Hmm.
No, as a tester, you probably have to conceptually understand programming and programmers' mindset to then be able to do your job efficiently. So, let me give you an example, not as a testing example, but in NHAI, I was responsible for the security of the toll plaza operations. Security involved not just external network security, but security from internal people who were trying to skim money out of it. And first few times, I actually got beaten badly because people bypass that security. And then I started thinking like a thief, and I said, if I have to do this at a toll plaza, what are the things that I need to do? And then I discovered a lot of vulnerabilities which I did not think of. So, as a
Yeah.
tester, you have to think like a programmer. You have to know programming concepts before you can say, aha, so this is where things can go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Lovely. I'm pretty sure you have covered all these things in the course also.
So a
Yeah.
lot of these concept visualizations are there in the JavaScript course, which is on test drive. Thrive.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sanjay
Thank
sir.
you.
Any
Thank
closing
you.
thoughts on all the questions which were asked by the audience?
Uh, Happiness is when you understand things, and you will understand things only when you visualize them. So if you want to be happy doing what you're doing, whether it's testing or programming or learning any other craft, I
Yeah.
would seriously recommend start learning visualization. There's one particular book, actually two, which might uh, help you in this. One of them is called The Memory Book, simply called The Memory Book by Harry Lorraine and Jerry Lucas. Maybe you can type it in the chat. The Memory Book by Harry Lorraine and Jerry Lucas. It's an absolute gem. It opened my eyes towards visualization. And the second book is called People Watching by Dr. Desmond Morris, which again makes you visualize not content wise but people wise. So makes you understand people and communication around you. So the Memory Book and People Watching are two books I swear by. They changed my life for sure.
Perfect. That is amazing. Thank you very much, Sanjay sir.
Thank you so
Guys,
much for inviting.
I am pretty sure that you had a good time
Oh, I enjoyed
having.
it thoroughly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Uh,
Thank you
yeah.
everyone for
Bye,
being
sir.
here and attending. And you can connect with me. You can find me on social media like LinkedIn.
I'm
So connect with
Sean.
me. It will be great to connect with you, discuss more technology, show you more about visualization.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you everyone.